Welcome to Threatsafe. This is our podcast to help SMEs and SMBs and the people who manage IT within those businesses or responsible for IT to get the very best from the technology that they deploy and then also to manage their cyber security. Let's listen to this week's podcast. Hello, everybody. I'm Martin Roberts, Managing Director of NewWays, and
I'm Toby Stevenson, Chief Technology Officer at NewWays.
Okay. We've recently gone to video as well as the podcast, which is just sound. And I have to make an apology before we start, Toby. I made a big thing about being with it and understanding technology early episodes. This being episode 9, by the way. In that I was pointing to the links at the bottom of the screen, and I realised soon afterwards that if you're just listening to the podcast, all you get is a moment's silence while I point at the bottom of the screen, and you don't even know I'm pointing at the bottom of the screen. I can be pointing anywhere. I could not be pointing. So it's it's worth bearing in mind. It's not necessarily a visual thing. Anyway, enough of that. Episode 9, folks, of Threatsafe. Welcome, Toby. Just to remind everybody, this podcast is helping people who are perhaps in charge of IT, responsible for IT, but don't necessarily execute it. You take all the responsibility, but you don't necessarily have the control. Hopefully, we give you some insights and some words to understand and such like. And I thought we had a chat earlier on, Toby and I, and we want to talk about a particular scam. We talk all the time, don't we, Toby, about, we'll call them computer scams, phishing and things like that. But actually, quite a common one, which we've seen a little bit of, is telephone scams. When you get that call, and I think it'd be worthwhile talking about what one sounds like. I almost said look like, but what one sounds like. What happens in the conversation? What work has been done, and such like. I understand that I stop answering the phone these days by saying, "Hello, it's Martin Roberts," because then somebody says, "Hello, Martin Roberts." So I just go, "Hello." So it's a little technique. But talk about the phone scams that we have maybe witnessed recently, Tony.
Yeah, and I would say that they're probably, well, I would have originally said they are an initial vector, but I'm not so sure. But so to explain what we've seen, what we've witnessed. So somebody within an organisation, be it the finance department or the managing director or somebody senior within the business, receives a telephone call. The telephone call is purporting to be one of the financial institutes they use, so it's their bank or credit card company or somebody like that. And then they either say, we've noticed some fraudulent activity, or something like that. And of course, when the bank rings you, you instantly get put on high alert, and the scam then ensues. And what we've seen is essentially the scammer, the social engineer on the other end of the phone, managing to orchestrate their way onto the target's PC. So they tell them that there is a problem, and they need to take control of their computer to have a look at it. And they do that, and then they ask them to log into the online banking, so they can go through some of the transactions that they're talking about. And then more often than not, the screen goes blank for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. Screen returns with the online banking signed out, and the person saying, "We've checked it all out, everything's fine. Don't worry about it."
Okay.
So that they kind of de-escalate the situation, and then disappear. And they ingratiate themselves in different ways. The first way is they will say, "We've noticed some fraudulent activity. around a specific transaction, and they mention something and you say, I've got no idea what that is. Well, let's take a look. Or, as we've seen in a couple of instances, they will actually make reference to something that actually is going on within the business.
Yes.
So, an investment that's being made, or a transfer of funds, or switch of bank account, or something like that that's going on. They'll make reference to that again, kind of making them seem like they know what's going on, that they've got access to the bank systems, they are from the bank, and so on and so forth. But then invariably what happens at some point over the ensuing hours, and I don't know if this is all the time, but what we've mostly seen these calls happen in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So the idea being is that then the call ends, and then the day runs out, and then the next day happens, and there's either a moment of clarity overnight from the person that was called, and they feel unsettled by something, or they get a legitimate phone call from the legitimate bank saying there's some fraudulent activity underway. And what's essentially happened is that these attackers, when they've got onto the target's machine, where the online banking is fully logged in, they proceeded to schedule a whole bunch of transfers to far-flung accounts around the world, which it's normally only by the diligence of the fraud team at the financial institute that has picked these up. It's unusual to be sending X to North Korea, or sending this to Russia, or to South America, or whatever it happens to be. Thankfully, in most cases, major disaster has been averted, but you can quite easily see how these things can fall through the cracks.
I guess the key thing here is some of us will roll our eyes and go, we're not going to fall for that one. But the truth is that sometimes, and I've actually seen this, we were called into one organisation some years ago to investigate, where actually the fraudsters had discovered, I think by LinkedIn, that there was a new starter in the finance department, because it had been put up there on LinkedIn and said, hey, so I've joined X company. I got the name, got through to them, phoned them, and the person didn't understand the protocols, had bizarrely been given full access to setting up payments and things like that. And the fraudsters actually gone in and redirected the payments at the last moment to change the destination account, and it was a substantial amount of money. But the particular vulnerability was the new starter, and I'm sure a lot of it is just chance that they take, and it's a little bit more anonymized than that. But the truth is that when you're taking somebody on, and then they're new, you need to do a proper training of them, and to look out what to look out for. And in all instances, I say anybody phones you from a financial institution, put the phone down, and it's really important they'll contact you again.
Definitely,
because they very rarely will phone you directly. And
exactly.
I would tell everybody who we work with, if you get a phone call from the bank, it's more than likely not.
Exactly. I mean, one of the instances that we ran into, actually, we had the bank ringing in to the target, and told them that there's been some suspicious activity and you need to speak to our fraud team. Here's the telephone number. They rang the telephone number for the fraud team. The fraud team answered it as, I think it might have been Barclays fraud team, and then initiated that conversation through there. The following day, when they thought, actually, you know what, that doesn't feel right, they rang back at the same telephone number, and it was answered as HSBC. So, it's like Monday was Barclays, Tuesday's HSBC, Wednesday's going to be Santander, and
absolutely. Now, I think the point is that yeah, the cardinal rule is that the bank is unlikely to phone you out of the blue, even if there is something going on. Yeah. Now, how do you counter this, folks? Well, I mean, online banking is so prevalent. In fact, try and do banking without it these days. Check your account at least once a day and multiple times a day, because if there's any activity going on, you'll see. If somebody was to make such a call to you, we can see fraudulent activity going on. You put the phone down and then get onto your online banking and see if there's anything odd going on. But certainly don't engage. And if you then go online and you see something which doesn't look right to you, contact your bank via the normal channels. I suppose the other thing I'd say is, with all these things, is don't be afraid to ask someone else.
Definitely, because you can get so caught up in it, you don't see the obvious, and someone that's detached from it says, "Well, that's obviously not normal behaviour."
Yes. I mean, we talked about, we had those banking frauds going on. We're seeing, folks, it's a relatively easy fraud to do in theory. And what they're doing is they're probably making umpteen hundred dials a day, hoping to get through to somebody, and they might get successful once a month.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's a bit like when you get the emails that say they're from DHL. If you're expecting something from DHL, your interest is piqued. If you're not, you say scam, not interested.
Yeah,
and it's the same with that. If the person ringing up happens to be from your bank, it resonates more than if it's not from your bank.
Yes, and I'm going to go off slightly here, because putting banks aside, deliveries companies particularly, that's a great attempt that happens all the time. I've had an instance recently in the last 6 months where I've actually ordered something from a company. I know it's going to be delivered by a particular courier, and somebody, I've then received a text from somebody purporting to be that courier, from that courier, saying, "Hey, we need to change your delivery. We need to do something, or actually, there's a problem with your delivery. It's not going to be made. Can you click on this link to go and say?" And what's happening is somebody's inserting themselves into somebody's got hold of the fact that I'm getting a delivery, and they're giving that information away, or selling information, or their system is vulnerable, and they're seeing I'm delivery, and they're trying to tempt me to click on this link, and I know it's a fraud. Because remarkably, if I'm patient enough, the goods do turn up the next day after all.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can give actually a really great example of this. Actually, is outside of work. This is a family member, but it's an illustration of how these kinds of things are not always instantaneous, and they change into other kinds of attacks. And this particular family member, they were waiting for a delivery, and it hadn't turned up. But it's from a courier that's doesn't have the best of reputations for delivering on time anyway. But they happen to get
you've just narrowed it down to only 15
all of them.
Or 20. Yeah, okay.
But they happen to get an email from them saying, "Oh, we're trying to deliver, but there's still some money to pay on the postage." So of course they think, well, I'm expecting a delivery from this courier. That's obviously a huge cock up by the person that sent the item, but I want the goods. So they click on the link and they put some credit card information in, and it says, "Thanks, your package will be delivered tomorrow." Think nothing more of it until they regale me with this story of how rubbish this particular courier is, and I said, "That doesn't sound right." And then they showed me this stuff. I said, "Yeah, that's not right. So be careful." Anyway, the goods turn up the following day, and they didn't think anything of it. A week or so later, they get a phone call from the credit card company. "We've noticed some suspicious transactions on your account." Okay. And they start talking through them, and then they start going through this setup where they're basically then trying to get them to set up a new bank account in somebody else's name and then transfer money out of the current account and nothing to do with the credit card. But what's happened is that when they paid for this £1.27 or whatever it is for the short shipping, they use a credit card. So the attackers know that they've got a credit card from this particular vendor, so they then can ring up and pretend to be them and say, we've noticed some suspicious activity. And it's kind of how these things keep on living a life over and over and over again. And actually it was good fortune because I actually happened to walk into their house while they were on the phone to them. I said, who are you speaking to? Oh, it's the credit card company. Right, what are they asking? And then it was quickly terminated. But it's they can be quite ingenious and quite clever, and no longer is it terrible phone lines and accents that give them away as being scammers. It's a lot more professional in terms of what they do now. And we've said before, the likes of a deep fake voice and things like that will only make these phone calls even more convincing.
I think maybe the takeaway from this, and I don't. It's interesting actually, because we do really focus on the technical aspects of hacking and things like that. But this is the thing about this. It's actually quite low level stuff. It actually doesn't take a great deal of expertise to execute, but it can be very lucrative. It obviously is lucrative, or they won't be doing it. So the takeaway from this is really, I would say, is don't be afraid to put the phone down as soon as possible. The moment somebody asks a question, or even I put the phone down the moment people say, "Hello, I'm from HSBC. I'm from the." And most of the time, I know it's not my bank because I don't bank with some of these organisations. But first reaction is put the phone down, because if it's really, really, really important, they'll find a way of contacting you. I've actually
got a really a kind of an interesting development actually from one of the ones that we've seen recently. So, organisation that was planning on making a big financial transaction, phone scammer rang up. We've noticed something unusual on the account. Let's take a look. And so basically that whole scenario that I mentioned earlier. But as we're starting to dig into it, and when we're speaking to the target, turns out that actually they were planning something, and the scammers actually revealed some what you might call relatively intimate or company confidential information. Which it kind of got me thinking, well, maybe actually this all started from someone's account getting phished, and someone's in there listening to emails. And decided, I'm going to phone up and be the bank. So again, it's how these things can all be interrelated. I think it's that's a really interesting development, I think.
No, I think, as you've said, and I guess as we draw to a close here, the thing to bear in mind is that these people are, I do tend to paint them with the brush of being lazy good for nothings who are just after your money without making too much effort, but actually they put a lot of effort into it and a lot of expertise, and they train very carefully, and they're doing the right things, and we need to recognize that, and therefore we need to be very, very vigilant, and because those transactions, if you're lucky and it doesn't turn out to be an absolute disaster, it's still inconvenient. But if it doesn't, I know of one company, they weren't our customer at the time, but and they got the money back, I'm sure, through insurance, but lost £250,000 to such a scam. That money went and was never to be seen again, and it caused enormous issues for them in terms of immediate cash flow. But also just the impact on the business. They've got quite a robust policy now in terms of
absolutely. I can believe it. But no, you're right. The attackers are not lazy, but they do like the path of least resistance. So the more you can challenge and make it harder for them, the sooner they will lose interest and move on to someone that's perhaps less challenging.
My fear is that I did go through a stage actually when I was getting those calls of being quite rude. Which my fear is either I antagonize somebody, particularly because I've been quite rude, Or secondly, it does turn out to be somebody who's legitimate and is trying to help me. It's not happened yet. I'll get away with it. Right, everybody, it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month still. And I hope that you're visiting threatsafe.co.uk. And I'm not going to point to an imaginary line in the air right now, because you might not be watching, you might just be listening. But if you are watching, and just to make it more difficult for the person who does the visuals here, it's this website here, or there, whatever, as opposed to that one there. And if you're just listening and not watching, do visit, and you'll find out some good resources there allied to the campaign this month. Toby, anything else from you this time?
No, I think that it's just try and be vigilant and maintain that suspicious outlook on the world.
Yeah.
If something's too good to be true, it probably is, and don't take everything at face value.
Yeah, and be suspicious, folks. It sounds awful, doesn't it? Be suspicious.
Don't trust anybody.
Don't trust anybody. Don't get paranoid, but don't trust anybody.
Put your tinfoil hat on.
So thank you everybody for listening to episode 9 of Threatsafe. We hope to see you next time, and thank you very much, Toby.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to Threatsafe. We hope you found it enjoyable and informative. Please reach out with any comments, feedback, questions, and we look forward to seeing you soon.